I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Front. Thank you. Don't sit down yet. I'm going to torture you a little longer. I want you to look at this side of our Legion. Standing there is a small table. The honor guard, in his digital fatigues, is Sergeant Devon Brown. On the other side of him is my first vice commander, also a Marine, Eric Brandsetter. Those who have served and those currently serving in the uniformed services of the United States are always mindful that the sweetness of enduring peace has always been tainted by the bitterness of personal sacrifice. We are compelled to never forget that we enjoy our daily pleasures. There are others who are enduring and may still be enduring the agonies of pain, deprivation, and imprisonment. Before we begin our activities, we pause to recognize our POW MIAs. I call your attention to this small table, which occupies a place of dignity and honor. It is set for one, symbolizing the fact that members of our armed forces are missing from our ranks. They are referred to as POWs, MIAs. We call them comrades. They are unable to be with their loved ones and families, so we join together to pay humble tribute to them and to bear witness to their continued absence. The table is small, symbolizing the frailty of one person, a prisoner, alone against his or her suppressors. The tablecloth is white, symbolic of the purity of their intentions to respond to their country's call to arms. The single rose in the vase signifies the blood which may have been shed in sacrifice to ensure the freedom of our beloved United States of America. This rose also reminds us of the families and friends of our missing comrades who keep faith while awaiting their return. The red ribbon on the vase represents an unyielding determination of a proper accounting of our comrades who are not amongst us. The slice of lemon on the plate reminds us of their bitter fate. The salt sprinkled on the plate reminds us of the countless fallen tears of families as they wait. The glass is inverted. They cannot toast with us at this time. The chair is empty. They are not here. The candle is reminiscent of the light of hope which lives in our heart to illuminate their way home, away from the captors to the open arms of a grateful nation. The American flag reminds us that many of them may never return and have paid the supreme sacrifice to ensure our freedom. Let us pray to the Supreme Commander that all of our comrades will soon be back within our ranks. Let us remember and never forget their sacrifice. May God forever watch over them and protect them and their families. Thank you, and you may be seated. I'd like to welcome you to Post 347. I have first responders, which I look as veterans as well. Thank you all for your service. And I had the police department was here too. Oops, I'm sorry, sitting behind me. You know, I'm height challenged, so sometimes I don't see that far. Larchmont Police Department and Fire Department are represented. I thank you so much. "70 years ago, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed what many historians consider the greatest social legislation ever passed by the U.S. Congress. As popular as the GI Bill remains today, it took the horrific cost and bloodshed of World War II to remind many Americans just how great a debt is owed to our veterans. In 1932, Thousands of World War I vets camped out in Washington, D.C. to petition their government for bonuses that they felt were owed. Their campsite was forcibly overrun by the U.S. Army, and at least 2 veterans were killed by the police. President Franklin Roosevelt told the American Legion National Convention in 1933 that, quote, "No person, because he wore a uniform, must thereafter be placed in a special class of beneficiaries over and above other citizens," unquote. While Roosevelt would later prove himself to be a great wartime commander-in-chief, what he and the others failed to realize at this time, as the veterans were not asking to be part of a special class, they just wanted a shot at the American dream that they fought so hard to defend. Most Americans profess to truly love our veterans, especially on gatherings like this on Veterans Day and Memorial Day. And while their feelings are usually sincere, it is important to remember that veterans are defending us 365 days a year. The heroism that has been demonstrated time and again by veterans, from the American Revolution to the global war on terrorism, is sometimes unnoticed by those of us who enjoy the security that their sacrifice have provided. Our debt to these heroes can never be repaid, but our gratitude and respect must last forever. For many veterans, our nation was important enough to endure long separations from the family, miss the births of their children, freeze in sub-zero temperature, bake in wild jungles, lose limbs, and far too often lose their lives. Military spouses have had to endure career interruptions, frequent changes of address, and a disproportionate share of parental responsibility. The children often had to deal with changes in school, separation from friends, and hardest of all, the uncertainty of whether or not mom or dad will live through their next combat tour. Warriors need advocates, and this is why the American Legion exists. We are here to serve veterans, their family, on our communities. Veterans need each other, but more importantly, our country needs our veterans. It is often said that without our veterans, America would be speaking Russian, German, or perhaps Japanese. Regardless of which view of alternate history you take, we do know that our veterans of America would not be American as we look at the Middle East today. We know that this is where the largest dangerous and committed group of fanatics that want us dead. While ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and other terrorists may lack the conventional weapons of Nazi Germany, even with the guns, or Imperial Japan, they are every bit as evil as their intentions. Those that defend us from our enemies must be supported. Whether the service was in Baghdad or Beirut, we need to serve veterans as well as they serve us. Even with the guns have temporarily stopped firing. The American Legion shows its support for Americans' heroes through its Family Support Network, Legacy Scholarship Fund, Operation Comfort Warrior, Temporary Financial Assistance, our National Emergency Fund, to just name a few. Veterans do not ask for much. They do not want to be in a special class. But benefits are a mere drop in a bucket compared to the financial and human costs of war. And while not all veterans see war, all who have served in the military have expressed a willingness to fight if called to. Companies should understand that it's smart business to hire veterans, and while members of the Guard and Reserve deploy, it is Americans' business to ensure that their civilian careers do not suffer. Homelessness is another issue that affects veterans. Too often today's tattered citizens on the street were yesterday's toast of the town in a crisp uniform with rows of shining medals. This is hardly the thanks of a grateful nation. We can do better. We must do better. Historians have said that Dwight Eisenhower was prouder of being a soldier than he was of being president. And while relatively few veterans ever reach the rank of general, pride in one's military service is a bond shared by nearly all who have served. The pride is on display on every obituary page in the country where military service, regardless of how many decades have passed and subsequent achievements reached, it's the death notice of nearly every deceased vet didn't get to us. Can any CEO or distinguished Ivy League graduate truly claim to have more responsibility than a 21-year-old squad leader walking point on patrol in Afghanistan? Fewer than 10% of Americans can claim to be veterans. Far less than 1% of our population is currently defending us in the global war on terrorism. Yet many seem intent to try to balance the federal budget by diminishing the quality of life programs designed for these families who have already made extreme sacrifices. Veterans have given us freedom, security, and the greatest nation on earth. It is impossible to put a price on that. We must remember them. We must appreciate them. God bless you all for being here. God bless our veterans. God bless America. Thank you. Veterans come in all shapes and sizes. You can see I'm height challenged, and I'd like to bring another veteran in who has done 3 tours in the Mideast. Tommy, would you bring Sergeant Pearl in? This is a U.S. Marine Corps bomb dog. 3 tours. He has been retired and has his discharge papers for the Marine Corps. What a dog. And also a veteran. All right, I think right now I gotta get some of the dignitaries out of the way before they tar and feather me a little later on. Let me start with George Latimer, our senator, first, please.
Just to give you an idea of the scope of what these American military men have done. Lexington, Concord, Bunker Hill, Saratoga, Valley Forge, Yorktown, New Orleans, the Alamo, Bull Run, Antietam, Gettysburg, Petersburg, San Juan Hill, Verdun, Somme, Pearl Harbor, Anzio, Normandy, Guadalcanal, Pork Chop Hill, Inchon, Khe Sanh, Da Nang, Grenada, Kuwait, Kabul, Kandahar, Mosul, Baghdad. These are spots on a globe. And most of us, if we think back to when we were in elementary school, we'd be hard-pressed to find them on a globe if the teacher asked us to find it. And yet, every one of these places became individual places where Americans were tested. Americans just like the men and the women who stand before us now, who in each in their generation, the vast majority of these places where men and women stood up for American values are long gone. but their sacrifice isn't forgotten. We're fortunate to have with us veterans from World War II and Korea and Vietnam and Grenada and Panama and the various Middle Eastern conflicts we've had over the last few years. But the Revolutionary War claimed people from this very community. The Civil War claimed people from this very community. And in every one of those battles, young men left his comfortable hometown to go somewhere else, either in the country or across the globe, and risk their lives so that we would have the freedom we have today. It is a sobering moment to think about the sacrifice of those men and women. And for those who are in this room who represent all of the other men and women who have served our country, a grateful nation, a grateful community, people you know, friends, people that sit and have a beer with you at the bar, we stop and say, what you've done is great. What you've done is greater than what we've done. And we thank you for what you've done. And we respect you forever for what you've done.
Assembly and Otis to come forward, please.
Thank you, Al. It is always a pleasure to be here and to hear Al's remarks every year because they are always so meaningful. Today, Veterans Day, is most notably a day of appreciation, and we appreciate the service of through the generations and the service of the people that serve today. There is larger meaning, and especially in this time when we look around the world, because every country has veterans, but there's only one United States of America. There is only one country who has consistently fought for the rights of individual, for freedom, for liberty, for religious freedom around the world, often for ourselves and our country, but also for our allies. And that commitment is a dear commitment. When you look around the world today, and Al alluded to some of the evil that is afoot in the world today, you realize that those values are not automatic. After World War I, there was the idea that it would be the war to end all wars, but we know that that is not true. And unfortunately, we live in a more dangerous world where some people, their philosophy is to be against freedom, to snuff out freedom. And so the battle will continue. We have to do right by our veterans who've already served, and we have to do right because it's a commitment, but we also have to do right for the veterans that serve because we have to send the message to future generations that if you serve, this country is going to stand by you and your family while you're serving and forever on. And so we're here today to honor all those that have served through generations and to say thank you for what you've done to keep this blessed country of freedom free and to spread that idea, that value around the world. Thank you, Al. Thank you all.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Is Congressman Engels in our presence yet?
He's right here. Yes.
Oh, would you step forward, please?
Thank you very much, Al. You know, you said something before, and I couldn't agree more. In Washington, first of all, we're not doing a very good job of balancing our budget in the first place. But secondly, we should never ever balance our budget on the backs of veterans. Never, ever, ever, ever.
Yes, sir.
We have something in Washington that's called the sequester. That is an automatic spending cut all across the board. I voted against that stupid bill because I believe that in Washington we need to be making decisions, not just kicking the can down the road. And so I want to tell you that we are going to resist the cutbacks, and I think we're working on it. But I believe that it would be a disgrace if we were to not fully fund the things that our veterans need, whether it's health care or education or whatever benefits they deserve. They're not looking for handouts. They're looking for thanks, what we should be generally doing without thinking about anything else. Because I don't think there's anything that's much more important than our veterans. And my colleagues have spoken about all the places around the world where Americans have fought and are fighting. All one needs to do is turn on the TV or the computer or read a newspaper, and we know that these are very perilous times for the world. In fact, I can never remember a time when so many things are happening so quickly all at once, and we are once again confronting the evil of the world. And while we don't take the job as policemen of the world, we do have national interests that are important to us, and we have brave people that go out there and defend our freedoms. And so I'm just here on Veterans Day to say thank you to all of you who have served. Thanks to our young people now who are serving, and I want to tell you I've had the opportunity to travel around the world and visit with our troops, and I'm just so amazed at the top notch of young men and women that we have.
We have one right there.
In the military. Well, thank you. Thank you for your service, and all the vets here, thank you for all of your service. We treasure you, we applaud you, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I sort of saved the best for last. Can I call the town supervisor? Don't be mad at me.
I'm very happy to be here on Veterans Day as well. Yes, thank you. My dad served in the Navy as a lieutenant commander, and I heard a lot of hijinks stories about the Navy throughout my childhood. But it took me becoming a town councilwoman and the supervisor of the town to participate in all the wonderful events with the American Legion Post 90 and Post 347 and our VFW Post 1156 to really appreciate our veterans in a different way. Because as much as I, of course, respect and thank you for all the sacrifices and incredible work you've done in being in the military, I also want to thank you so much for how you enrich our communities and how you enrich our lives. By having these kinds of ceremonies, by participating in our community, by showing us and as examples of what great work you do, and that it is such a privilege to get to know all of you and to be with you and celebrate these things. So thank you so much for being part of our community, continuing these kinds of events. And I want to thank my town board members, Deputy Supervisor Ernie Odierna, who's here tonight, and Councilmember Jan Alpin. And I want to ask Mayor of Larchmont, Ann McAndrews, if she would like to come up as well.
Thank you, Nancy. I can forget you.
Thank you. I'd like to also tell you that we were honored by 3 members of the board. We have trustees Lorraine Walsh, trustee Marlene Colbert, and I thought I saw trustee Peter Finelli. I wanted to do something a little different on this Veterans Day. I wanted to give a homage to a very special veteran in my life. And I'd like to show you a picture. This is a picture of Yeoman First Class Phyllis Sullivan McAndrews, my mother-in-law, who passed away this past March. She was forward deployed at Pearl Harbor in communication shortly after the beginning of the war, and was one of the first women from Iowa, from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, to become a member of the Waves. I've had the privilege of being her executor, and I found that little envelope that many of us have with some very special things in it. 2 important things. Her honorable discharge from the U.S. Navy, which showed that she won, as a woman, something very rare. That's the Pacific Campaign ribbon. And also, she had what the military would call a skinny. That's an iron sheet. And she was in communication at Pearl Harbor. And so this came across her desk. she saved a copy, and she saved it for the rest of her life, over 7 years. Here it is. From the Commander, Air Force, U.S. Pacific Fleet. All division heads, 9:30 for Maine. The United Press carries flash from General Eisenhower that surrender of all German forces in Holland, Denmark, Northwest Germany, Helgoland, and the Frisian Islands becomes effective at 0800, probably European time, tomorrow, 5 May. Obviously, 1945. Phyllis had 3 other brothers in uniform, and she knew that this was the end of the European campaign. But she was still in the Pacific, and no one knew how much longer that was going to take. We know it ended in August. And we also know that many of the soldiers were awaiting transport from the European theater to the Pacific theater right after this wonderful announcement. So this was important to her, and it's important to every one of us in this room, because it shows the end of the European theater in 1945. My mother-in-law was so proud the day my son graduated from the Naval Academy. And she was always a tremendous fan of the U.S. Navy. So, thank you all for your service, and thank you for giving me the privilege of showing you a little personal end to what Veterans Day means to my family.
Thank you. I think by now you're all tired of hearing from me, but I would like, in a final tribute, all veterans, please stand up and bring Pearl in too. She can come to the center. She's a veteran just like we are. What you're looking at is 10% of the population of the United States were veterans. You're looking at them, and thank you all for your service. You may be seated. If I missed anybody, I'm sorry, but you know, life goes on. All right, I've said enough. I'm tired. Thank you.